We may live over 5,000 miles from Lincoln Financial Field, but what we lack in proximity, we make up for in film study. And each and every week, we'll be bringing you in-depth film breakdowns from across the pond and the Sooner State. Welcome to On the Shane page. I'm your host, Shane Haff. You can follow me on Twitter at ShaneHaffNFL. I'm joined, as always, by BGN's own film guru, Jonny Page. Give him a follow on Twitter at JohnnyPage9. Jonny, how are you doing this evening?
I'm good. What a busy couple of days. So a little bit of a quicker show today. We just got done filming an hour, or not even an hour, 45 minutes of Patreon watching the entire Shrine Bowl, all 22. So now we're going to do a little quick public episode because we haven't got anything out in the feed about the hirings they've made. So we're killing two birds with one stone, double show day after I spent my entire Sunday night hammering all 22 of the Shrine Bowl, which is a sentence I thought I would never say. So shout out to the support the articles got. It was definitely worth doing for BGN. Shout out to the new guys in the Patreon that are joining because of it. Yeah, if you want to say thank you for me for grinding all 22 Shrine Bowl film, which, as I said, I will probably never do again, then yeah. And yes, it's not Wednesday, Yakko. We're doing it early because we're killing two birds with one stone. We're already filming. It's the off-season. Schedules go out the window in the off-season. But yeah, first public pod since the Eagles actually hired someone. I know you had an emergency pod up on the network. So yeah, apologies to those surprised that we've gone live today, but you can still watch it on Wednesday if that's when you normally watch us.
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be anything time sensitive in this one. So if you want to wait till Wednesday so it doesn't mess up your schedule, by all means, feel free to do so. Yeah. Yakko's always here in the comments, though. Always appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Yeah, so what we're going to do, Jonny mentioned, we watched the all 22 of the West offense in the Shrine Bowl, which is relevant because that Sean Mannion, the Eagles' new offensive coordinator, was calling the plays for that. It's kind of the first look at him calling plays. So before we dive into that, and again, we can't post that all 22 publicly because I don't think we're technically maybe supposed to have it.
What all 22?
Yeah.
College all 22?
Yeah.
No.
So we can't post that publicly, but that is in the Patreon. If you want to come hang out there, you can watch the full watch along, and there's lots of other perks. The Discord is always hopping. We're still putting out videos and lots of content behind the paywall. And in fact, there will be a greater percentage of our content that will be Patreon exclusive in the off season. So it's a great time to jump on board, grab a free 1-week trial and check it out. But we're going to talk Jonny's initial reactions because he hasn't got a chance to do that yet. And we'll just dialogue a little bit and then talk about our top takeaways. So Jonny, let's take you back to last Thursday. It's Thursday, I think. The Eagles announced that they are hiring Sean Mannion as their offensive coordinator. And I believe this is probably like 30 minutes after you went to bed. So you woke up and see it the next morning. What are your initial thoughts when you see that move?
Yeah, terrible timing for the emergency pod. I was moaning at Shane off air, like, we've got to get more emergency pods on. I'm going to jump on when we hire an OC, and then...
And he wouldn't even get out of bed.
I didn't even know. I woke up and the Discord was, like, popping still, and I was like, there's a lot of messages. You want the honest truth? Like, I'm very honest here. I didn't like the Mannion rumours when they came out. Just be honest. I didn't like them because there's inexperience and there's inexperience. And for me, 1-year QB coach, I worried about installing an offense. I worried about having his own identity, I guess. Obviously, as every sports fan does, you sell yourself the more you read. And by the end of the day, I was becoming more sold. I was like, right, you know what? You got to get the guy before they become the guy these days. I'm such a big LaFleur guy. I always have been. The more I researched it, and I'll talk about this a little bit, for me, the Eagles are more similar to the Green Bay offense than people realize. And we'll talk about a little bit like this. There are differences, but I don't think they're like a completely different. Green Bay obviously lives in the Shanahan world, but it wasn't as extreme to me as like a full-on, as like fullback on half the plays, whatever. So I was like, started like a 5 out of 10 when the rumors came. Then I went up to like a 7 out of 10. Then the Josh Grizzard thing was announced, I think the following day. And I was like, oh, I'm really in now. Because there was some weird takes from like, like good people like Brett Coleman, like a big fan of Brett Coleman, like Deontay Lee. tweeting like, well, Sirianni's puppets here. And I was just like, about the Sean Mannion, I was like, am I missing something? Why are you hiring a puppet from the LaFleur tree for a young and upcoming QB coach who's going to get an OC job in the future with anyone he wants if he keeps being good in that LaFleur tree? And I was just like, if you're going to hire a puppet, just promote your own QB coach. Go and get Jim Bob Cooter, who you've worked with, who runs the same scheme as you and Steichen. Like, to me, they went outside the box. And when they hired Grizzard as well, who is a Mike McDaniel guy, like he's lived in that, I was like, now I'm an 8 or a 9 out of 10 because I think Grizzard's good. Is he good enough to be the OC? Possibly. Like, would I hand on heart? I'd been happier if Grizzard was hired, maybe. But I think the fact Grizzard was willing to come here as a pass game coordinator, he's just been an OC. He's obviously going to have a role. There's no way he's taking that job and he's not going to have an input because he could have got another OC job. He could have got another job elsewhere. And the most important thing for me is he's installed an offense. He's coached. He's like set up the offseason. He knows how to do things. And I think Mannion needed someone a bit more experienced. And I know Josh Grizzard's hardly experienced, but he's done it. And the fact that he's done it, he's only a young guy, 35 years old, but to me, like as a combination, I almost viewed him as a duo, I'll be honest. I also think, and this is like the last thing that anyone should care about, whether it works or not next year, but you've got a built-in contingency plan next year. If Mannion blows up and is amazing, absolute best case scenario, he will leave because every OC leaves and he'll get a head coaching job somewhere. You probably just promote Grizzard up to OC and you're like, run this back. And I think the other good thing is you're in that tree where there are so many good coaches coming out. The tree that the Eagles are trying to recruit from, if they're trying to do the Sirianni-Steichen tree, is very small. If you look at the potential options that were out there, how many of them are outside zone under center guys? What have we spoke about this year? The league is going to an under center league. Like the teams are running it more than they ever have the last 3 or 4 years. The best offenses in the league are running more from under center. Who is the one top offense that is not running more from under center? It's the Colts. So that's like, if you're not going to get Shane Steichen, you're not going to get, I don't know, Frank Reich or Jim Bob Cooter. Those coaches who come from that tree are very hard to get. So getting a young guy who lives in that McVay Shanahan world and trying to mold him, I am all for it. And the more I researched LaFleur's offense, the more I was like, again, Grizzard as well. If it all goes to plan, if you squint and you see the perfect blend, you get a really nice blend of new ideas, new offensive coordinators, different things that you can take from the Bucs in 24's passing game, which is obviously exceptional. You've got a guy who's worked under so many good offensive minds, and you combine that with what the Eagles do well and stuff. And I think what Hurts does well already, you don't blow up the whole offense. I know obviously you're going to blow a lot of it up because it's bad, but obviously there is stuff you're going to keep. There is stuff at times last year I was like, that's a nice play. But if you combine it all, I think there's some stuff that I think could work really, really well. I think the devil is going to be in the detail, how well they can coach it, how well they can install it, how well they can get everyone on board. And I will admit, I think there are some parts of the offense personnel-wise, they need a total overhaul. So wide receiver, tight end, fullback, you're looking at a huge overhaul to run what they want to do. And that is a big challenge. But I'd say overall, I ended up convincing myself. And now I am more convinced.
Yeah, and so part of that research Jonny did is watching the Shrine Bowl and charting it out. And like I mentioned, we just watched it for the Patreon, so I won't rehash my initial thoughts because I did the Breaking News podcast, and you guys probably already heard those. You can go check that out if you haven't. I don't want to necessarily waste airtime as we've got a limited recording availability for today, rehashing all of that. But I think the biggest question mark for me is I feel like he's going to be good at designing a scheme, but he's not called plays. And so how is he going to be with having a feel for that and sequencing plays and things like that? And so that's where the Shrine Bowl comes in handy because he's doing just that. Now, he's doing it on not having very long to install things. And so the execution's bad all over the place. And I don't think you take a lot away from that. You could also say the defense is probably playing pretty basic too because there's not a lot of time to install things there either. But as we watched it, I just loved the way that he sequenced things together. Like it felt like everything belonged. So often this last season, it felt like the Eagles, we do these things to run the football. We go under center or we go 13 personnel and like, this is how we run the football and it's over here. And then over here entirely disconnected from it is how we pass the ball. We go shotgun, we go 11 personnel. And there was just like a narrow thread that combine them where every once in a while you would get an under center play action, or that's not how watching the Shrine Bowl felt. It's like, they're running a 12 personnel outside zone running play, and then they come back the next play with a 12 personnel outside zone bootlegging the other way, running a flood concept. And I just thought that the way that was all tied together, it was a way that made sense. It was a way that was cohesive. And I think that aspect of it makes some of the weird stuff coming out about Stoutland make sense, because Stoutland has run a run game a certain way. Now, the whole stuff about like he stopped calling the run game partway through the season, that's weird, and I don't want to get into that. But in terms of like, if you're going to bring in a guy and promise him autonomy of the offense, you have to let, especially when it's a wide zone play action, you have to let him run the run game as well, because you can't run shotgun inside zone for your run game and then try to run under center wide zone play action. It just doesn't work. It won't tie together. And so I think maybe that's where some of that weirdness comes from, that, that Stoutland was a hang up. It's almost as if the Eagles were like, we will absolutely kick Nick Sirianni out of the offensive meeting room. But they still wanted to have Stoutland doing the run game because they like him doing the run game. And it's just not going to work with this sort of an offensive approach. So watching it kind of made that click a little bit more for me, but I just liked how things built off of each other. You can speak to this. You charted the game out, but it's not like they were doing, the Dolphins under center play action, quick throws over the middle of the field. I mean, there was a throw or two over the middle, but a lot of their boot action takes you into flood concepts to the sidelines. And I don't think, those are plays that still, there's not a lot of risk. You're not trying to make as many layered throws over the middle of the field. You're simplifying into half field reads with players, with receivers rolling with your quarterback, and you've got the option to run. And so I think that suits Jalen Hurts' skill set pretty well. I mean, you're still going to need to be able to take true dropbacks. You're still going to need to be able to throw over the middle of the field, but I don't think it's like a square peg round hole situation here with Jalen Hurts and his skill set translating into this offense.
Yeah, I think, and again, Shrine Bowl, like for example, there was barely any motion in the Shrine Bowl, like barely any, but you have to put into consideration it's 1 week of install or something ridiculously short. But what I found interesting about Shrine Bowl as well was, and even you just watched it, we just watched the whole thing for Patreon. He didn't try and be fancy. He didn't see this as like, oh, now's my chance. Look at all this cool stuff I run, blah, blah. It was like, no, I'm going to run a standard, like, offense. Like, this is my bread and butter. I want to give you some numbers. So I looked it up. I was looking up, obviously, a lot of people have the difference between, like, Philly, Green Bay, and the Eagles. And there are some differences. And obviously, there were some huge differences. But some of the numbers are quite, like, interesting. Like, you wouldn't say they're, like, absolutely massive. So, like, the Eagles never pass from under center, right? They ranked 31st in passes from under center, yeah? And Green Bay ranked 3rd. That's obviously a huge change. But a number's like 23% to 38%. Like, you're not talking like, oh my God, the Eagles are going to run 30 under center passing plays next year. You're asking Hurts to maybe do like 5 or 6 more a game. Some of them were quite similar. There were obviously some differences there. The Eagles ran way more hitch routes than everyone else this year. Well, the Packers ran out way more out routes. And you're like, well, you can combine the two. You don't need to, suddenly Jalen Hurts is never going to throw a hitch again and every single one's going to be an out. You might say, right, rather than run the static concept, we're going to get a little bit more, try and get some more yards after catch opportunity. Whereas the Bucs were way more like middle of the field heavy than obviously the Eagles were. The Eagles targeted middle of the field the 32nd rate last year. That's not going to stay the same this year. It's just not. The idea that Hurts can't do it, like, screw that. It's going to happen one way or the other. If Hurts can't do it, Hurts going to be the QB the following year. They're not going to just run the same stuff. You don't hire these two coaches to do it. So I went through, I guess. I sort of like tried to guess. Like, I don't think you hired like the most extreme guy in the world. Like, motion, Green Bay were 11th, Tampa Bay were 8th. Like, yeah, you're running more motion, but it's not Mike McDaniel motion. It's not the 49. You're not like the most extreme version. If anything, LaFleur is like a more balanced version of McVay and Shanahan. He's like, I think if you look at their numbers, he does vary. So I won't bore you with like loads of numbers that I've been looking at, but I'll just tell you that they are slightly different. When you compare like the Packers to the 49ers and the Rams, they are not as similar as you think. So, for example, the 49ers are in 21 personnel 36% of the time. The Packers and Rams are nowhere near that. Nowhere near that. Like, their number doesn't even appear on my charting because it doesn't exist. The Rams ran 13 personnel 30% of the time. The Packers and 49ers are nothing like that. So every team has their own flavor. It's not identical. All of their primary concepts were outside zone. No surprise. But like the 49ers was significantly higher. The 49ers pre-snap motion was significantly higher. So again, it's not just the same as the 49ers. The Packers did actually have more gap scheme, which is something we noticed. They did have more power, more counter than the other two teams had. The Packers threw a lot more behind the line of scrimmage than the other two teams, like significantly more from behind the line of scrimmage. And funny enough, we saw that in the Shrine Bowl game, Mannion having some screen passes that didn't work at all. But forget the success rate. The Packers were 18% behind the line of scrimmage, whereas the Rams and 49ers were like 10, 12%. So quite a bit higher. So to me, like, by the way, the Packers were also higher on deep percentage of passes, like 5% higher than the 49ers. So if you didn't get that, they're higher behind the line of scrimmage and higher deep throws. What would I argue a Jalen Hurts offense might like is behind the line of scrimmage and deep throws. So they're not going to suddenly come in and like, oh, we're running deep digs every play. It's not Matt Stafford. Every team has to adapt to the players they've got, right? Every single one. So we can't just like say, oh, they're going to be the exact, because they're not. They are going to be different. But the more I looked at the Packers, the more I liked them to me. They were different. So when they ran, like, they were far lower motion, technically, the Rams and 49ers. They were in the middle play action. They were higher screen, as I mentioned. Like, they weren't the same as the other two teams. And I wrote a little bit about this, but like I said, they were more like behind the line, more screens. But again, maybe they had a poor offensive line, but they were definitely taking more deep shots. And again, that's partly Jordan Love and stuff. But some of their numbers are like slightly more similar than you'd think. So like personnel, 11 personnel, Packers 55%, Eagles 59%, 12 personnel, 33 to 25. Not that dissimilar. Packers ran 21 personnel, Shane, only 3.1% last year. We just got done watching the Shrine Bowl. Mannion ran it more then. So it's too simple just to say like, oh, the Packers are going to be like the same as the 49ers. LaFleur is the identical. As I mentioned, they ran way more duo, the Packers, last year as well. They had a lot more man concepts, and we just turned on the Shrine Bowl, and they ran way more power. So, like, I think the idea is just, oh, they're going to just simply install McVay. Like, you can't do that. Because McVay is McVay because this year he had 3 great blocking tight ends. I do think there are core philosophical things that will stay the same, as I mentioned earlier on. Receivers are going to have to block. Tight ends are going to block. That is going to happen more. I imagine they'll add a fullback on the roster. But who knows?
Which is going to be a problem because the Eagles currently have 0 receivers and 0 tight ends that can block.
Yeah, and I love Devontae Smith, but like there could be an issue there. Like they're not an issue, but you might need to go, right, if he's going to be this kind of receiver, we need to get more others. So I was going through it, like, and again, and this is just like, it's not radical. I was going through some of the Eagles numbers. So it's like 71% or something shotgun last year. I think it will drop, but only a few percent, maybe 65. Mid-60s. Under center will go from maybe 22% to like 28. More play action throws a game, maybe like 3 to like 8, that kind of thing. All offenses do some similar stuff. Like my point being is it's going to be a philosophical change, but I'm not worried about this idea of like, well, Hurts just can't run it at all. Like what? Like we just watched the Shrine Bowl. He can't run a boot action, throw a check down to the flat or throw a flood con. Like, no, it's a rubbish excuse. You haven't done that in the past because that's not what you've wanted to do philosophically. So the more I research it, the more I quite like it. The more I like it. I think there's going to be a really interesting mix, and I'm absolutely fascinated to see what role Stoutland has. Like, for example, if they keep Stout, but they hire an external run game coordinator, that would be very interesting. So we'll see what happens there. But that wouldn't surprise me because I feel like they might want to get someone else to install their run game. But yeah.
I watched a University of Iowa quarterback who threw for 1,700 yards last season run these bootlegs and throw the ball to the sideline. So don't tell me Jalen Hurts can't do it.
Yeah,
if Mark Gronowski can do it, I'm pretty sure Jalen Hurts can handle it. I think it's like the fit. I do think it's going to simplify some things. I think we saw some scheming up of receivers being open. You know, we saw some of the old classics in terms of like mesh rail and some things like that. Mesh rail, dagger.
Support for Fans First Sports Network comes from Big Fork Brands, bringing bold bacon sausage, paleo pork jerky, and Chicago-style sauces to your table. Enjoy rich, smoky flavors made with sustainable ingredients and chef-crafted care. Big Fork uses 100% heritage hogs raised outdoors without antibiotics and has been featured by Food and Wine, the Chicago Tribune, and QVC for their bold flavors. Listeners visit bigforkbrands.com and receive 20% off at checkout using promo code FFSN. Bigforkbrands.com, promo code FFSN. Thank you for your support of this show.
And a lot of flood concepts. And that's one of the things that we just talked about a lot, is that there's nothing coming from the backside into Hertz Field of Vision over the years. The check downs don't make sense. Like, so many times last year, I talked about the check down being a running back flaring to the flat on the backside. And by the time you throw it to him, he's there, and it's too late. There's nowhere to go. Like, I mean, we saw in the Shrine Bowl check downs over the ball, running backs and tight ends crossing, running like a mesh as your check down, and just better scheme, better structure. I was really excited. Now, does that mean anything? No. But I was excited by what I saw, just seeing a different flavor of offense. I think it's going to be fun to watch and cover.
Yeah, again, like, I think the things I'd really look out for in terms of like big picture are more passes from under center, obviously, especially earlier on. More of an idea around, this might sound weird, less concept sometimes, but running the same stuff from a bunch of different ways, which is what that world wants to live in. Whether they use motion a lot more, motion's the one I'm intrigued to see. And I think they'll try and get Hurts times of throwdown as well. But I remember scouting the Packers, so I've got an article up on the Packers because the Eagles played them. I actually went back and watched my video preview myself last night. And I remember, like, when I was breaking it down, I wasn't like, oh my God, I'm watching McVay Shanahan. Like, I really didn't feel that way. Like, I'll go through some of my, like, offense just very quickly, like notes on Green Bay last year. But I mentioned, like, they run the ball a lot. Very, very heavy run game offense with Josh Jacobs. Very much run the ball to set up the pass. Very heavy play action. I said very, very easy, clear read to a quarterback. But they hit the flat a lot. As I mentioned, behind the line of scrimmage, they dress up hitting the flat in a ton of different ways. We saw some like C-gap inserts, which is quite popular amongst the league these days in that tree as well. A lot of condensed formation motions. But again, it wasn't like the Rams 13 personnel. And guess what? When Christian Watson came back, guess what they did? They threw the ball deep more. So again, like, personnel is massive in this kind of thing. And then run game wise, it was like very heavy. The pack in efficiency, but top 5 at attempts per game. A lot of outside zone, which you expect, but a lot of duo, a lot of pinball looks. Again, all this stuff like matters. Who is there? When Tucker Kraft got injured, they had to pivot. So I don't think Mannion's going to come in and be like, oh, we did this. So the answer is we probably don't know exactly what he's going to do. But I think some things are pretty clear that he's going to want to install. And for me, I wanted more than anything a fresh break with last year. When I read about Sirianni calling plays, I wanted to just throw everything out and give up with his team, because last year was so bad. They had to do something radically different. So for me, they've gone in a different direction, and I'm willing to give that a chance, because I could not do another year of last year. It was so bad.
Yeah, a great way to get the fan base fired up about any offensive coordinator hire is just float out the idea that Nick Sirianni is going to call plays, and instantly whatever guy you hire looks so much better. So glad they didn't go that route. But yeah, you mentioned like how much the Packers ran the ball. I think they were like top 10 in the league in neutral down run rate this last year. I was trying to pull it up and the website wasn't cooperating here, but they were a run heavy team on neutral downs. And so I don't think it clashes with the Eagles being a run first attack.
No, not at all.
It just means you're going to be running more outside zone type stuff, which, to be fair, the Eagles were awful at this year.
They tried. They just could not do it.
Yeah, and maybe that's got to do with some of the injuries on your line. Obviously, Lane Johnson's out for most of the season. You get Landon Dickerson and Cam Jurgens banged up off and on. So that's going to be huge if they're able to get that run game installed, because it did look horrendous last year. But so much looked bad last year. I'm almost willing to just wave the wand and say last year was in the past, and let's build this thing out going forward. And I just think it's all going to be quite a bit better. But yeah, I've got the numbers up now. The Packers early down pass rate was slightly below 50%. That was higher than only 10 teams. They were the 11th most run heavy team on early down neutral situations. So, and the Eagles were about middle of the pack, slightly above middle of the pack for what it's worth. So they were actually quite a bit more run heavy than the Eagles were last season.
Yeah, they were. They were a run heavy team. I think the Eagles may have considered that, which is why I think I'm so interested about the coaches he hires. That's going to tell us a lot. We almost should, we'll revisit this when we see what the offensive staff looks like next year.
Yeah.
I hope Stoutland's back as offensive line coach because I see no reason not to have that. I know this year wasn't as good, but I still think his track record is exceptional. But I'd be very interested that they hire a specific run game guy, but we'll see.
Yeah, and then you mentioned Grizzard comes in from Tampa Bay.
Yeah, and I think that's huge. To me, they're a package, as I said. To me, I don't love the move as much without him.
Yeah, and we'll get more into that because we do want to watch some of the Green Bay film. We want to watch some of the Tampa Bay third down film because he was the third down guy for Tampa Bay, apparently. And so we'll dig into some of that stuff on Patreon, and we'll share takeaways on the podcast feed here, but in the coming weeks. But Jonny, is there anything else you want to fire off about those guys before we kind of wrap this one up?
No, literally, we're the kind of people that I think we're honest. We want to watch before we talk. So I'm going to go back and watch every Bucs third down from 2024 because why not? And then we'll report back more with what we learn afterwards because numbers are only so much the thing. So yeah. I also want to go back and watch some more Green Bay. I'm also really interested to watch Green Bay with Malik Willis.
Yeah.
I was looking up the numbers, and I don't think the offense dramatically changed, to be honest. It was pretty similar, which is interesting. I looked up, I think obviously they ran a lot more, but in terms of actual concepts, it was quite similar. Shotgun percentage was nearly the same. Actually, Malik Willis was higher, ever so slightly under center, but barely at all. They ran a lot more with Malik Willis, but again, that's because he ran the ball more. Interestingly, they ran less maybe outside zone with Malik Willis, which I thought was interesting. They ran a little bit more inside zone, whether there was more just standard zone replays. Personnel was the exact same, so the offense didn't change much at all. Play action was identical. RPO was also basically identical. Motion was basically identical. So the only difference was Malik Willis ran a lot more himself, and they called it a few more run plays. But it wasn't like the whole offense. They totally changed it. It was pretty similar. So, yeah.
All right. Well, we will get into those things over, the next couple of weeks. So if you want some more of the schematic stuff, again, go check out our Patreon at patreon.com/Eagles Film Room. We spent about 45 minutes rewatching the entire offensive performance from the West team, which was Sean Mannion's team. So you can go check that out. We'll have some more stuff coming out there. We've got a new guy in the Patreon as well. It's been doing a lot of draft stuff. So if you're into draft stuff, you can come check that out. Otherwise, you can stay here. We'll continue to be here on a roughly every other week basis through this part of the offseason, breaking down free agency moves and all the things that are upcoming for the Eagles. So wherever you want to catch us at, wherever you want to follow us at, you can do that. Be sure you're following us on Twitter. I'm at ShaneHalfNFL. He is at JohnnyPage9, and we'll catch you guys next time for another episode of On the Shane Page.